Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to Social Studies class for a grade 8. Today inshallah we're going to complete our lesson 5, which is the medieval culture and technology. Page mm, page 40. So, last time we spoke about the medieval architecture. We spoke about Paris and the most attractive places that it has: the Arc of Triumph, the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre Museum, the Palace of Versailles. Then we spoke about the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and we said that it's built according to the Gothic architecture. And we said that it has a special things. One of them is the flying buttresses that support the wall and the ceiling because it's made of stones, so it's so heavy, so we feel afraid of falling down, of the stones to fall down. So because of that we have the flying buttresses. And we read then this text, and we stopped doing we stopped here. We were doing the activity combining sources. We said name some characteristics of Gothic architecture. List at least 3. They used buttresses, they used stone vaulted, and the window are long. Also, if we want to add, we can add that they use also what? Special shape of glasses in the front of the window, and they have the facade or the front side of the building. It's always like they try to make it attractive as much as they can. Okay, number 2, what's the meaning of romantic? Romantic means what? Let's see. It means like Romans. Okay. Question number 3, what term means face of the structure? Facade. Okay, then we said what happened to Notre Dame Cathedral in 2019. See, 2019, when a fire at Notre Dame Cathedral destroyed its roof, and now they're trying to rebuild it or refix it again. Here they want to try the new words, then to search for their definition. I chose vault or vaulted. I don't know if you have an idea about it, but it means arched roof. Check the paragraph, check the text. If there is any new word for you, write it down, then search for its meaning using the dictionary. Okay, let's carry on. So this is the facade of Notre Dame. Check the style of it. As we said, it's attractive and it has a special type, a kind of like flourish or floral glasses. And see how the walls is long, and how they have like arched ceiling. Let's imagine the building from inside. It's going to be arched. It has an arched ceiling also. So let's read. Building of Notre Dame Cathedral. The flying buttresses are on the outside or exterior of the cathedral are made of long arches of stone that raise up to provide support to the high walls where the windows are. These support vaults that span across the main aisles of the interior and hold up the roof. Here it's clear here how they're holding up the roof. Flying buttresses support the outside walls that holds up the arched vaults. Here the arched vaults span the main aisle of the floor and hold up the roof. Let's see here. Here is the stained glass window of Notre Dame. The high walls allow spectacular large stained glass window. Also, we said that it's going to It gives a chance for the sunlight to enter as much as possible. Here, let's read. It's a floor plan for Notre Dame Cathedral showing the cross vaults that span the roof. Yeah, plan of Notre Dame Cathedral. The facade or entrance is at the bottom. The apse of the church is shown at the top of the floor plan reality. So here is a plan for the cathedral from inside. Okay, let's carry on. The terrible fire consumed most of the roof structure of the building, including its old growth timber wooden beams that were about 900 years old. All of this was destroyed. Fortunately, the efforts of the Parisian firemen saved most of the stone structure walls and even the famous stained glass window. So, the stained glass window on the facade here, it was saved from the fire. But now the best architects, engineers, and builders in the world are working together to come up with a way to restore and rebuild the roof and the structure of the great cathedral. The large towers at the front of the building survived. Those large towers in the front of the building survived. Why do you think it's important to save these kind of things? I mean, those kind of buildings, those kind of architectures. Don't you think that this symbolize the country? It's important because it symbolizes the country and it gives us like a chance to know about the history of this place or the people and cultures that lived in this country. So because of that, it's so important to take care and to preserve these kind of artifacts, these kind of archaeological sites, those kinds of buildings. All these things are like special and important for all countries. Now let's watch the video about the Gothic architecture. We said the Gothic here, the Notre Dame Cathedral is one example of the Gothic architecture. Let's see, what's the Gothic architecture? Let's watch the video.
Welcome to Easy Architecture, your guide to the built environment. What is Gothic architecture and what makes it unique? Gothic architecture came out of the Middle Ages, with the first truly Gothic building appearing around 1140 AD. And no, it wasn't built by Goths.
Whatever.
It was built by the French.
We.
Contrary to modern-day Goths who embraced the dark, Gothic architecture was considered uplifting for its time. Gothic cathedrals are partly recognizable because of their large walls of stained glass windows, which allowed light to fill large open spaces and create a heavenly environment. But to construct these open spaces and walls of glass, they had to be creative. Builders of the Middle Ages took traditional methods of construction from around Europe and the Near East and modified them to reduce the need for load-bearing walls, bulky columns, and build higher than ever before. Here's how they did it. The most important element of Gothic architecture is the pointed arch. Arches provide a method for opening space while maintaining the strength of the walls. They allow for things such as doors and windows. While these guys knew about the rounded arch, the pointed arch is something they imported from the Near East and can be seen in early Islamic architecture such as the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Architects of the Middle Ages borrowed the idea of the pointed arch knowing it would let them build vertically higher than what was previously possible. This is because the pointed arch was more efficient at distributing the weight of the walls and roof. Remember, these buildings were made primarily of brick and stone and were very heavy. Managing and distributing the weight was really important, and the pointed arch was key in managing it all, especially when these arches were crossed to create a ribbed vaulted ceiling. Vaulted ceilings weren't a new idea either, but because the pointed arch was more effective, so was the ribbed vault. This resulted in a need for fewer columns, and those that were used were taller, thinner, and provided another distinguishing characteristic of Gothic architecture. Helping to disperse the weight carried by the pointed arches was the flying buttress, and something that gives Gothic architecture its unique silhouette. While a regular buttress butted up against the wall and kind of blended in with the masonry, a flying buttress was much more elegant and much more obvious. You see them mostly on the outside of the building as they move the lateral forces across one or more arches. Despite supporting so much weight, the flying buttress disguises the load with an almost magical design. When you combine the flying buttress, pointed arch, slender columns, and ribbed vaulting, you get buildings that looked unlike anything seen before. You have a building that's no longer supported by walls and has a more open interior environment. With the weight of the building taken off the walls, you also have an opportunity to fill them with something other than brick and mortar, resulting in those large windows of stained glass that help define Gothic cathedrals. Another distinguishing trait of Gothic architecture is the ornamentation. The rose window, usually above the west door, is one of the most obvious examples. It depicts the final judgment of man and is part of the Gothic tradition in which biblical and historical stories were portrayed in stained glass and sculpture throughout the cathedral. Be complete without gargoyles. On a practical level, they were spouts that moved rainwater off the roof. On a spiritual level, they scared people into going to church. Gothic architecture started in France, but the style quickly caught on and became the standard for cathedrals and churches throughout Europe. There are some local variations, like in England, where the design is more horizontal, and Italy, which embraced a more colorful ornamentation. But they all share the same basic design and engineering elements. Gothic architecture lasted until the late 1500s, around the beginning of the Renaissance, when it was gradually replaced. But the Gothic style would reappear again at different times and places in history for its association with religion and morality. And the term Gothic architecture wasn't used back in the Middle Ages when the style first emerged. It was during the Renaissance, using Goth as a derogatory term.
What?
No, not that kind of Goth. Goth is in the Eastern Germanic people of medieval Europe. Basically, they were calling it barbaric.
Hey, not fair.
Sorry, but it's okay because we love it now, even if we sometimes forget where it came from. And remember, next time you look at a church, a Gothic cathedral can be identified by the pointed arches, slender columns, ribbed vaulted ceilings, flying buttresses, rose windows, gargoyles, and ornamentation. Now you know something about architecture. Wasn't that easy?
So, whenever you see any kind of a church, it's most of them are built according to the Gothic architecture. So, this is our lesson for today. Wish you enjoyed this lesson. Wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.